Hi, this is Vinita Bhatia, editor of Campaign India at Cannes, and today I have with me Abhay Singhal of InMobi. He is the CEO and co-founder of the company. Now, they've had a very interesting journey, and I'm going to ask Abhay to talk about it rather than go on about it. Abhay, thank you for taking the time to speak to Campaign.
Vinita, thank you very much and welcome to InMobi Glance Cafe here in Cannes.
It's a lovely place that you have set up, and I'm glad that InMobi has finally, put a stamp and planted a flag here.
Absolutely, it's a very emotional moment for us. We've been the global company since the day one, but what a global company you are if you can't put a stamp on the crossette here.
And
We're
more so because of the fact that you have come from, and correct me if my pronunciation is wrong, from Kadubishanhalli to Cannes. That's spectacular journey.
absolutely look, Kadu recently to Cannes, the story of rising India, the story of InMobi Glance, and that is something that we are incredibly proud. We are proud of our heritage, where we come from, and we are also proud of the global nature of our business and taking over the world. We're competing with the best people in Bay Area, and you see every marquee brand here, and InMobi is standing tall with each one of them.
And I can say one of the best examples of you standing tall is that this year, I think you had two great activations. One was that you were the first Indian brand that was part of the Super Bowl.
No, not this year. I think we're planning. We're going to figure out at some point in time. But that's an ultimate dream. I think we want to be the first brand that goes on Super Bowl. But we'll see when it will happen.
That's a great benchmark to set for yourself, and it also speaks a lot of your aspirations, especially because believe a few months ago you also did this activation at the New York subway, right? Where Penn Station, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, and
Yes.
that was also an interesting one when you took over the entire
Yes.
thing.
We're doing activation in all the cultural centers. We were in South by Southwest. We were in New York Fashion Week. We were at Penn State Station. We will be in Paris Fashion Week. So we're taking over wherever the cultural centers of the world are, wherever the news gets created for fashion and advertising. And you'll find InMobi and Glance being present in all of those centers.
So, is there any reason that you feel that InMobi wants to be in one of those places, and you're trying to have this global footprint rather than not looking at it only from an India lens?
Look, we are incredibly proud of where we come from. I think we are who we are because of the system where we grew up in and the complexity that we has to deal with. And it's also easier to sell globally. We've always heard that, oh, Google of India is Google, Amazon of India is Amazon. As a founder, I actually want to create uh, an example for the people to be able to take it when they talk about InMobi and Glance as well. They want to be taking us at a global level and not just at a local level. Now, if you need to stand with the global brands, you need to be present where the global brands are. Not many of these brands, while they do their India activation, but you and I both know the products that they come to India, they come far later in the journey. They are always doing their best things in their home markets, and we want to be competing with them in their home markets.
It's interesting you mentioned that because from what I understand, Glance now already reaches hundreds of millions of users even before they unlock their phone, right? So, basis that and this kind of reach that you have, are there certain behavioral insights that have surprised you the most about how people discover, browse, or shop in that first 25 minutes of engagement per day?
There's a little bit of a narcissist in each one of us. Earlier I used to think about that who's going to like seeing themselves on their own phone. But you'll be surprised how much people are uh, affected and positively change when they see themselves in the way Glance represents. I can tell you a story of my own wife. For some reason, never thought, she thought that she never looked good in brown. Now, I don't know why. Now, Glance made her see one image of her in brown, and can you believe it? There are about 8 pieces of brown that she has in the wardrobe. And I was asking her the other day, I'm like, where did these brown came? And she said, don't I look good in brown? and and that's just an example that I'm seeing everywhere. We do over 25,000 customer surveys every month in the US, and we learn things about Oh, Glance has inspired me to lose weight. Glance has inspired me to change my hairstyle. Glance has inspired me to change my wardrobe. Glance has inspired me to wear something more color and not just with black and white. And look at this shirt. I normally don't wear this shirt, and people have been complimenting on this shirt. This Glance recommended me, and I've been wearing this shirt. Otherwise, I would be typically in the solid pastel colors. Uh, but everyone is getting inspired by Glance.
So those kind of insights are very interesting. But there is also another very interesting insight that has been emerging a lot, and which is about the idea that agents will increasingly transact with other agents, right? So, and InMobi has recently partnered with Scope 3, which is entirely built around this premise. So, according to you, what does this agentic exchange look like? Especially in practice, because today's programmatic stack has become so layered that there is a good chance it could very much become redundant if this agentic stack gains ground.
Absolutely, it's actually completely being rewritten. That entire agent infrastructure is actually rewriting the entire programmatic stack. Uh, but one thing that is absolutely true is that advertising is going to become way more accountable than what it is right now. With every shift that came in the industry, the accountability of the media kept going up and up and up. And we believe that with this agentic transaction, where a lot of research is going to be outsourced to the agents, at the end of transaction or just before a transaction has to happen, an agent is going to wait for a human input, and at that point in time a human will be making a decision whether they want to go with the recommendation or they don't want to go with the recommendation. Now, what does that mean? That means look at your own advertising behavior. When it was Google started showing those blue links when you were searching. You were still clicking on the link and doing the research. Now all of that research is going to be outsourced to the agent, and as a human you will be making a decision right at the end of it. Maybe you can bargain with the agent a little bit. Maybe we can go back and say, oh, Mr. Brand, I'm looking for a 10% discount in this. Are you going to offer me 10% discount? Now that's a world I'm imagining. So in some sense, advertising is going to become way more accountable.
We are talking about an age where advertising is moving from software that assists humans, right, in the kind of behavioral decisions that it makes on their behalf. But don't you think that some of these decisions, it's also about the comfort level, about how much you're letting the agents make, and putting some kind of things like you just mentioned that if you were to decide to attire yourself, it would be a solid block colored kind of stuff. But Glance showed up a very vibrant one, and you decided to do it. So, how exactly do does a brand rather decide what is the kind of autonomy that they will give to these agents, and where do humans still need to retain control?
So my view there, Vinita, is that I think any decision that is made on behalf of a human, where the human is not in control of the decision, is going to make us all very uncomfortable. For example, if I won't have pressed the button to buy this shirt myself, I wouldn't have felt okay with it.
Correct.
Imagine the shirt just showed up on the doorstep. There was no agency of involvement from my side. So humans still need an agency of involvement, but humans need inspiration all the time. So my take is that humans will outsource a lot of research. They will outsource a lot of inspiration. They will outsource a lot of um, grunt work that used to go in doing the research. But ultimately, humans will retain the agency of control before pressing the final button whether they want to transact or not transact. And that is what I believe. Because if they're not involved in the process of purchasing, if they're not involved in the process of making a decision, they will not own that in the end. And that's the fear. So agents are going to all go all the way until the state of making a decision and giving the choices, but the final choice and the final decision will still be by the human.
So let me dial into what InMobi and Glance are doing, and I believe that you are piloting some of these agent-to-agent workflows globally, right? So what are some of the first commercial use cases that you've already started testing? Maybe you could just give me a glimpse into the kind of categories and brands that have shown the strongest interest, and if you have identified some of the early signals that will determine the model's success?
So we are doing these across two dimensions. So I'll give you the example about from the retail world, and then I'll give you an example from an automobile world. In an automobile world, imagine you're seeing an ad coming in. Now, as a natural human being, you're gonna have a curiosity. Like, imagine a process of buying a car. You always want to know what is the price of it, how does it compare to some other model in India, what mileage it gives, what's the on-street, off-street mileage, etc., etc. And imagine being able to interact with this brand agent within the ad itself. You don't have to leave the ad, but you have an agent that is working with the brand and the consumer to help answer all the questions to them. We made this possible for hundreds and hundreds of brands across the world, where they don't have to do anything. They just have to give us the creative, which we already have access to, and using that creative and all the other world's information that is available to us, we're creating a conversation agent on behalf of the brand that is helping the consumer get to know more about their advertising. Um, then take the example from a retail world. Again, the same thing. Look at your own personal behavior. If you go into a shop, like we pick a shirt and we say, okay, this is a beautiful shirt. Now, do you have this in lilac pink or do you have this in some other color? Imagine you being able to have the same conversation with a retail agent. It presents to you an option, and then you say, oh, is it available in medium, or is it available in pink color, or is it available, or what pant can I match with it, or does white sneaker go well with it, or do I need to wear a black sneaker? Imagine being able to interact with an agent in this conversation, and suddenly your entire basket size increases, your ability to transact increases, and you're more leaned in than leaned back. So these two examples we are bringing at scale with Glance and InMobi to the world, and we are seeing amazing adoption. In fact, there are some case studies that we're going to be publishing very soon where we are seeing at least 20 to 30% uplift in terms of not only the engagement but conversion ability by the brands. And these are just amazing examples.
So, this is a very interesting thing that you mentioned about the two categories. Okay, one is retail and the other one is automobile, and they kind of sit at two ends of the entire consumer purchase cycle. One is more of a low value slash mid value product, and the other one is a very high value one. So why is it that you probably did not decide to do with some of the middle funnel, or rather the middle value one? I would think about something like a BFSI, where there is a lot of thinking that needs to be done, a lot of intervention that is there, or a pharma, again, a lot of queries, a lot of confusion that is there. Why did you not choose
I
to pick
just
that
gave
up?
you these two examples which are at extreme. There are, of course, all the middle categories that are there as well. And as we're launching this model category by category by category, you have to also get your Q&A right. You have to also be able to understand when you're, let's say, explaining somebody about a specific drug, you want to make sure that your recommendations coming in a manner which are FDA compliant with all the other compliance out there. I don't want to be wrong on that. So probably you're not going to see this in pharmaceutical anytime soon, but you're definitely going to see this in BFSI. You're going to see this in CPG. You're going to see this in all the other verticals. But the two examples were high research, high purchase ticket, less frequent. Second was low ticket size but very frequent purchase. And my example indicated that in both of them, you can take an existing ad and a product and convert it completely, transform it using AI into a conversation agent, which brings a consumer from being a lean back to a lean forward experience.
And have you identified some kind of a roadmap as to how we are going to introduce this, maybe sector by sector, category by category, through the year, or maybe into the next year?
Uh, we'll be launching it depending on the uptake that we are seeing in the category. Right now, we've decided to pick it out in about two categories, both of them that I gave you the example. The third category that is going to come very soon is again the CPG category, which is one of the largest advertising category in the world. Fintech or the finance, BFSI, and pharma are going to be probably the ones that are going to come in little later, primarily because of the regulatory aspects of them, very specifically in the US. You want to be providing recommendation that are uh, in alliance with the local laws and the regulation.
And it also makes sense, right? Because by that time you would have taken all the learnings from this entire journey and then put it into the highly regulated markets that are there.
Absolutely. And look, my sense is that it is also somewhat linked to the India AI story, where I think that rather than training one large model, India needs to, in some sense, train very deep verticalized models. And that is why we're not taking one large LLM approach to solve all the verticals. We are taking vertical by vertical approach and seeing what works for the vertical and then taking it out there and launching it. And the good advantage point with InMobi is because we have such significant scale, our consumer response data is going to become our North Star that will make our models not only better, but also give us shape our roadmap on what to do next.
Got it. So, with this entire suggestion that almost 80% of the digital ad spend is now going to be routed through agents, okay? But do you think there are certain assumptions that sit behind those forecasts, because it could shift, we are seeing things changing dramatically. And if you do, then what could prevent adoption from reaching that kind of scale?
Look, I think I have no doubt that 80% of the dollars in the industry is going to go through the agentic infrastructure, and AI is going to be the big driver for it. I have no doubt on that. The only doubt that I have is in terms of the time frame that it is going to take. As human beings, we almost always overestimate the short term, but underestimate the long term. And this falls exactly in that category where people are saying, oh, 80% is going to transform. It's not that 80% is going to transform tomorrow. There are billions of dollars that have been invested in the infrastructure to make the advertising work. And while AI solves a problem, it doesn't solve the problem of natural diffusion. You would have already heard, while just 6 months ago, everybody was touting about, oh, how faster we can do coding. And just in 6 months now, everybody is talking about, oh, my token cost has already exceeded our budgets. So people are now reeling it in. So there's a huge difference between being 95% good and being 99.9% good. And that takes time. There is no way to cut short that time. So if you were to ask me that is 80% going to go through this infrastructure? Absolutely yes. Is it going to happen next year? Absolutely no.
Okay, that's a very good way to do some crystal ball gazing. And my last question to you is, again, correct me if I got my numbers wrong, but I believe that Glance was expected to reach profitability by June 2026, which is this month, and yet it has reported a 1.59 million dollar loss in FY 2025. This is despite revenue growth and stronger device partnership advertising. So, what matrix are you watching most closely today, and how much of Glance AI future depends on creating new advertising and commerce streams rather than just reinventing the existing model?
Look, there are three metrics that we care about the most when it comes to Glance. A, how many users' life we are able to transform using the agentic shopping, which means how many users in the world have access to Glance and Glance related products on their devices. The second is how deep is the engagement. What's the number of time that they are spending, how many prompts they are talking to the agent, how much they are training the agent every time in their conversation. And the third one is to our merchant partners who are trusting us to distribute their products, how well we are doing in terms of giving them the qualified traffic or giving them the qualified leads. These are the three metrics that we really, really care about. Revenue, loss, profitability, those are all corporate metrics. I genuinely don't worry about that because in the race of AI, we have to run fast. There is really no other option because the only sustainable advantage is the number of loops that you can run on your own product and your own learning infrastructure. So I don't really care about the profitability and the loss. And those three metrics that we care about, we're super green on each one of them. By the end of the year, we'll be probably on 100 million devices in the US, which will make us one of the largest consumer property to have come out of anywhere in the world and fastest consumer property to grow in the US. Uh, we have hundreds and hundreds of merchants that are relying us to get the right distribution. and our engagement times are shooting through the roof. So those are the three things that I care about, and those are the three things that we are very excited to be growing.
Excited and optimistic, I would say. And, I wish you all the best. And before I let you go, I have two questions more for you. One is that how do you see the India story playing out in Cannes? Because you have been a regular at Cannes. How do you see the whole India story playing out here?
I think as India, we need to own our story, and we need to come up more often to global events, and we need to feel very, very proud, privileged, and honored to be telling our story the way it has to be told. We're not a uh, we're not a Me Too market. We have a number of different examples of where we've shown the world on uh, how to be innovative and how to be innovative at a humanity scale. And probably when it comes to the AI, it's also India's moment. We need to teach the world how to do AI at a humanity scale. Today, anything that is happening in the AI world is probably only for the developed market. You know, even just to support the consumption today, you know how much dollars are being spent to run the infrastructure. Imagine 10 times of that population coming onto the AI. The world doesn't have that much of cost to run it. So India probably is placed very, very well to be talking about its strengths, and we need to do that in the global forums. It's not sufficient just to be doing that in the local markets.
And I'm glad that InMobi is already doing that significantly, by making sure that it's present and visible at a lot of the global forums. And my last question to you, and this is going to be a brand plug for campaign. Earlier, when we were having the conversation, you said that you actually read campaign, right? So if I were to ask you to say two things that you feel sets campaign apart from rest of the other media that you see, and why is it that you like reading it, and what would you like to see change in campaign? What would it be?
Look, campaign always brings me insightful things about what's happening in the media industry, whether it is in India or Campaign Asia that I also get to read in multiple different places. It is always bringing a very unique perspective. I think what I would want to see, and you guys may be already doing that, so apologies if this comes across as uh, unawareness on my part, but maybe trying to take some of the things that are happening in the global markets and setting them up in the context of India is a very insightful thing that maybe a lot of readers are going to be very interested about. Look, I've seen a bunch of our CMOs in India feel still very inspired or driven uh, by the things that are happening on the medicine avenue, and then they take and then they run the campaigns out there. But I'm sure there's a lot of good work that is happening in India at a grassroots level or at the brand level. I think maybe Campaign Asia could play a role in highlighting bridging west to the east, but also highlighting east to the west. And that could be a very interesting role that maybe a very few media people I've seen do. Like the trade publication in India is still not as mature as it is in the US. And maybe it's a big sign for campaign to take a big leading position on that and imagine itself to be the biggest trade publication. What would you do differently if you were based in the US and not in India?
Point taken. And on that note, I will also, while we wind up, thank you, Vishal. We are done.